Hey guys, welcome back to Real Reactions. We have to be really quiet because I'm hiding out in the Warrens' basement. Just kidding. Today we're having a special summer episode covering this summer's horror hit, The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. This is the third installment of the popular demonic franchise, and this is also considered the eighth installment of the Conjuring series. This movie was slated to release in September of 2020, but that was delayed due to COVID-19. In October of 2018, it was announced that The Conjuring 3 would not be directed by Juan, but would instead be directed by the Curse of La Llorona director Michael Chavez. The third film follows Ed and Lorraine Warren assisting in a murder investigation suspected of paranormal foul play in the early 1980s.
This is Ed Warren, here with Lorraine. All right, let's get started.
Residents of Brookfield were shocked this afternoon by the broad daylight murder of Bruno Sauls.
The court accepts the existence of God every time a witness swears to tell the truth. I think it's about time they accept the existence of the devil.
Whatever is going on, whatever happened that day, that was not Arnie.
It's a witch's totem. We think your family was cursed. And that connection's still open.
So, this is the first Conjuring movie to depart from the haunted house style and focus on an investigation. Do you think it worked, or do you guys think that they should have stuck with the original formula?
I think it worked for what it was going for. Personally, I love the haunted house stories because you get more of that family connection to see the dynamics of it. But what they were going for was, more of the case study, so you could see both sides more than just like the one side. So I think it was well, but it was also very stylistically very different. You got to see more of, Lorraine's gifts and to see Ed and Lorraine's relationship much more than the other movies, I would debate.
I would definitely agree with that. I can kind of see why they did it, since this appears to be the end of a trilogy, and there's a tendency with every trilogy to top off the last one with like, let's do big. It worked, but it's not necessarily my favorite. I prefer more of the like intimate setting. Some parts of it felt a little off in that sense, that it was a little like big when really it's documenting these real stories that happened, and in such a realistic way. And the first Conjuring and second are shot way differently, way differently. But I liked this movie more than I thought I would, because I heard terrible things about it, and I actually thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, I would agree with Derek. I wasn't really looking too forward to it either from the director's previous movie. I didn't really like that much, but this one I actually did enjoy a fair amount. I think the haunted house style, the unhaunted house style in this does work for it, because you do get a lot more of expansion on Ed and Lorraine Warren, which is, I think, a nice thing to do. It's funny, I watched 3, 2, and 1 in the opposite order. There's definitely a major focus in it, but not in this movie, where they literally are like the central characters. In the first one, you have the family living in the house, and in the second one, you also have the family living in the house. So I guess it's cool to see them more focused and centralized in this movie.
Yeah, I think it actually really works, because I think the haunted house style can really easily get repetitive. And I think this was a good way to kind of break it out from that mold and make sure that all three movies just didn't end up being like the same thing. So I thought that worked really well. I also really liked that it focused a lot on Ed and Lorraine, because I think Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga carry this trilogy. They are kind of what I return to see at this point. So it was awesome to have a lot of them in it. They are definitely what I would come back for another movie, because I think they're both fantastic actors. I think Vera Farmiga is just amazing. And so I feel like focusing on them a lot is great, because it really stops the cheesy acting and stuff. I feel like I can just depend on them to kind of carry the movies. So I think it worked really well. And I like that it made it a little less repetitive than before. Yeah. If no one has anything else to say, I'll move on to the second question, which is, this is the first Conjuring movie not to be directed by James Wan, and instead was directed by Michael Chaves. Do you feel as though his direction captured the spirit of the previous two films?
No, absolutely not. First of all, I'm a big James Wan fan in general, and the director of this film directed The Curse of La Llorona. I definitely butchered that. However, I saw that movie and I thought it was garbage. I love the story, but just how it was shot and sequences of it were terrible. I definitely see an improvement in this film of his, but it just did not have the same charm that I think James Wan brings to the table.
It definitely just like stylistically is much different. What's interesting is that James Wan wrote it, so it still was intended to have that larger type of story, but I feel like it would feel more natural if it was like the first two films, the second one less so, but the first film really felt like at points shot like a documentary, that type of like handheld. At first glance, sometimes in the first one, it looks a little weird. It kind of looks like they very naturalistic. It doesn't really. This one's way more Hollywood, and I do miss James Wan on this one. I think James Wan's a super talented horror director, one of the best working today. But I still thought this film there were some very well directed sequences. Like I haven't seen The Curse of La Llorona, but I thought the directorial work was pretty good, just not on Wan's level or what the Conjuring sort of does.
James Wan is really just a master behind the camera. I love Saw so much. Saw is great. Not the second one, but Saw is great. The first Saw. I'm not really a huge fan of James Wan's like spinning camera style, but he definitely toned it down like more later on in his career. But he's really just fantastic with the camera, especially when it comes to the first and second Conjuring movie, when it comes to like making the audience predict that a scare is going to come from one way and then it comes the other. He's really just fantastic with that. In this movie, tries to do it. I'll give him credit. Michael, blanking on his name, but he really does try, and I give him a lot of credit for it. But it just really can't really match up to James Wan's style. But at least he went for the moon.
Yeah, I think, I don't think it was that bad in trying to kind of mimic James Wan's style, because I haven't seen The Conjuring like a billion times, but I don't think it strayed too much from like the vibe of the first one. Like I said, I haven't seen the second one, so I'm not sure like what the segue is kind of like there. But when I was watching it, I wasn't like, oh, this is totally different, and like so much that it made me like not recognize it, But I also really like James Wan a lot. I'm picky about what kind of like modern horror movies I watch, and Saw is one of my favorites recently. And I watched Insidious recently as well. And then obviously I've loved The Conjuring for quite some time. And so I really do like his movies. I like his collaborations with Lee Wanell a lot. My best friend and I are like a huge fan of his. And so it's interesting that The Conjuring is like one of his that doesn't have him, like collabed on that. Yeah, I don't know if I thought that it was like totally different to the point where I was like, oh my God, ew. But you could definitely see that it kind of lacked, like, I think, was it maybe Alexis or John said, like the charm that he has, and just the kind of the genius that James Wan has in kind of the horror genre, and like making it seem so real and making it seem so effective. So I think you could tell that was definitely weaker in this movie. And if no one has anything else to add, I'll move on to the third question. So during the credits for The Conjuring 3, they played recordings from one of the Warrens' exorcisms. What did you think about this? And did you think the recordings were even real?
I think the recordings are real. It definitely sounds very demented, and I think that would be very hard for someone to do with their voice if they have no professional training in that background. Personally, I love to see things and not to just like hear it, to actually like see that person. I don't know. So a part of me wants to believe that those exact recordings are real, because they sound very like raspy and does not sound human-like.
Absolutely. I think that like obviously some stuff with these movies are exaggerated, especially this one, because it's based off a real case file, the last one that they did. But I do think it's real. It's just if you look at the real story, it probably differs in some ways. That's how most Hollywood things go. But yeah, I do think the end is
Yeah, I also believed it too. I also thought it was really cool that they did add that, because after watching the other two, the end credits, they just had like pictures and stuff. It was cool to hear like, oh, like this is sick. So yeah, I thought it was awesome how they really incorporated that at the end, and then they also had the picture of how the camera was destroyed or wasn't destroyed, if you think it's real or not. But
so I actually disagree. I think I don't like not believe in this kind of stuff, but just with the movie, and I think it's because I have trust issues now, because I don't know if you guys have seen The Fourth Kind, but the movie's whole spiel is that they were like playing actual footage and stuff like that, and then the footage isn't real anyways. And I think that gave me trust issues. So now watching the end of this movie, I was like, oh, that's not even real. It was just recorded to make it look more real and not like a movie, and then like put in, because that's kind of what happened in the other movie. But when I was watching that, I did not believe that it was real. And I just kind of was reminded about The Fourth Kind.
I think it's just creepy to listen to, because I work at a movie theater and I go in to clean that movie, and then I just hear it and it just scares the shit out of me. And then also they played the main Conjuring theme, which is also scary when you're in a dark theater and like just sweeping up popcorn. It's just creepy to hear. So I like when I was watching it, I first watched it at home and I was like, Jesus. And then I go into a dark theater, I'm like, Jesus Christ, like there's something behind me.
Yeah, it's definitely still creepy for sure. So now we're gonna move on to some would you rather questions about The Conjuring 3. Our first question is, would you rather be possessed by a demon for one night or live alone in a house haunted by demonic spirits for 1 week?
I would rather be possessed by a demon for one night, because if I lived in a demonic house with a demon for 1 week, one of them would probably attach to me and I would just be stuck with it, and I don't want to deal with that. So I'd rather be one and done.
I agree, 1 night. I think I'd rather survive 1 night than 7 nights, because I feel like the demons being there is probably just as scary as being possessed.
There would be an end in sight, you know. It would just
Yeah, exactly.
like that's the spell. It's 24 hours, you know. I would just be chilling as a demon instead of like, oh, it could come back. So I would definitely do the 1 day demon special.
I don't think I can agree with any of you. I think my reasoning is, when that demon attacks you, just how awful it makes you feel in the inside, and I'm not sure if I could ever recover from that. Like you see in movies, like people's skin gets like all green and stuff like that. They turn into like the Evil Dead zombies. It's like, I don't want that to happen to me. Like my skin is like fine. Like I'll stay that way. Like if I just like stay in a corner for like a week, maybe had like a can of like Cheetos next to me or something like that, like I'm set. Like just keep me in that corner for like a week. But I don't think I could ever fully recover from having a demon attached to me.
So moving on to our next question, would you rather be rescued by Lorraine or Ed Warren?
Lorraine. I mean, Ed is great. They're sort of a team. It's hard, but Lorraine is just more gifted than Ed. So trust Lorraine more. She's always the one that saves the day, you know. I mean, he helps out, but it's always her that kind of lands the final punch. So.
No, you go, John. You beat me to the punch.
I think my love for Patrick Wilson is taking me over in this question, but I think I would take him, because I feel like after he rescues me, like we can go out and like have a beer or something like that, and he'll be like a cool dude that we can hang out, and like Lorraine is cool. Like she like talk to ghosts and stuff like that. Like I'd probably be safer with her, but like I want to hang out with my bro Patrick Wilson. He's the man. Like I just want to like hang out with him after he saves me.
I would have to say Lorraine, because I think her and I would really get along. And when she would save me, I would just want to have a cup of tea with her and sit down and just be like, you know, what's your experience with your gift and how do you manage it? And like, you know, some, you know, other questions.
I think I would have to go with Ed Warren, because I don't know, I really like Bjork Horminga a lot, and I think that Lorraine seems really chill, like she would calm you down really nicely. But I think I have to go with Ed just because of Patrick Wilson. For no other reason. I don't know, he just seems like a cool dude, you know? He's kind of like the main dude of horror movies, like between like this and like Insidious, you know? And I don't know, maybe I have a little crush on Patrick Wilson. So I would be mad at him being the one to rescue me from satanic demons.
I also think I will add on to this. I feel like if like I had like after post Lorraine saving me, like if we went out and had a cup of tea, I feel like she'd give me a panic attack, because then she'd be like, "Oh, I sense a dark energy." What are you talking about? Like you just rescued me.
She would say some really scary shit. Like she'd be like, "The demons still lingering." And I'd be like, "Okay," like no, thank you. All right, our final question was, if you had to be stuck in one of the Conjuring films, which haunting would you choose to live through?
Not the third.
Yeah, I think it'd be terrible to have to like kill someone and then like, but you were possessed, but then still have to go to jail for it. and then not even be able to prove, like, it just sounds like you're crazy. I think I would probably go with the first one. Like, I feel like, I don't know, like, I've seen it one, I saw them all make it out okay. I am one of the younger siblings, or I'm the youngest, and that kind of scares me because doesn't some crazy shit happen to the youngest one? So maybe that would, like, maybe I'm damning myself when I say this answer. But I feel like, you know, it all worked out in the end for them. So I think, not their dog though, that was terrible. So maybe I wouldn't choose that. But yeah, I think I would go with the first one.
I would say the first one too. Why I say the first one is because I eliminate the second one immediately because the nun scares me if I like saw that in real life. I mean, that's like evil upon evil. I debate it's even more evil than the stuff that was in the first one. Because the second one, that's a pure demon. That's not just like an evil person that lived on Earth, right? And then they have the Crooked Man too. Like that's kind of creepy. But Jillian, you're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Third one, obviously you don't want to kill someone. So first one, for obvious reasons, I can deal with some of that stuff in the house.
The first one's just like easier to survive, I think. It's just like I would just leave the house. Like that's like always something that like until you start like in the second and third, like more demons and stuff, like they could very easily, you know, like sort of leave, you know, the house. So that's what I would do. I would leave the house, and yeah, definitely the first one. None of them preferably, but the second one though, like it would be in London, which would be pretty funny because everyone would have the accent, and it'd be like a good time. But I gotta say the first one.
Demons have accents too, like while they're possessing you.
Yeah, the nun actually just like talks about tea and crumpets.
Oh, she doesn't. Does she really?
No.
I was like, you're kidding me.
That would be great though. James Wan slipped up.
Yeah, they should have. But also, just talking back about James Wan again, is like how you're talking about how you would just leave the house. I think that's what makes his and Lee Whannell's writing so genius and insidious, is that they do leave the house, but it's not the house that's haunted, you know? It's their son. And so like I feel like he is really smart, and going back to like why this one just didn't quite have the charm that the other ones did, is that, you know, it was a tad bit predictable.
I think I would do too, because one, just like that whole aesthetic just kind of creeps me out, like being in the woods and stuff like that. Like if I'm in London, like in a tiny neighborhood, like I can go to my next door neighbor. Like I wouldn't be safe, but like at least I can go to my neighbor. Like, and in the first one, you have nowhere to go. And also I wouldn't want to be locked up in prison and kill someone, so I'm not going to choose 3. And then like Derek said, you know, like during the day, I can go out and like go to London, explore the town, you know, get some tea and crumpets with the nun. It would be a vibe during the day, then at night it would be absolute hell, but like at least I can get through it. I'm not stuck in a farmhouse in Rhode Island or in jail. So
I'm actually curious, would you rather, but like what's your favorite film of the 3? I'm curious about everyone.
First one. I think it was one of like the first like horror movies from like recent that I saw, and I actually really fell in love with it. Like I just kind of watched it randomly and I ended up really liking it. I love the whole 70s aesthetic, and I just think it's really cool. There's some other good actresses and actors in that one as well.
I think the second and first one are really close. I just think the first one just has a slight notch above it. For a few like just different moments. I think the hide and go clap thing is one of the scariest things I've ever seen in my entire life. That I watched that sequence again, and I was like, oh my god, this is just so bizarre. And the one where it's just something so subtle, like, oh, there's someone standing like behind the door, and you just can't see anything, but like it just like freaks you out, and you're like, Jesus, who's there? And then like nobody's there, and you're like, someone was there and you didn't see anyone. I think there's just small moments like that just barely pushes the first one in my eyes, but I still do really like the second one. And then the third one, I think it's a good time, but I just think the first one is a little bit better than the second one.
I think the first one is my favorite, and I'll say my 2 biggest reasons why. Number 1 reason is that I became very emotionally attached to each individual character, which, yes, somewhat in the second one, in my opinion, definitely not in the third one. They just didn't establish that type of foundation, but in the first one you really saw the family dynamic, and you felt for them, you wanted them to get out of that. And second is probably one of the most iconic lines in The Conjuring, and it's like really stuck with me. So when Ed and Lorraine Warren are like kind of first introduced in the film, they're giving the lecture at the college for saying that what they do. And then a student asks like what do you call it yourself? And they're like kooks, weirdos. And then Lorraine's like, but we like to be called Ed and Lorraine Warren. And then like cuts to about like what the story is. And I just think that's like so beautiful and it's really impactful.
I'm just gonna differ from everyone and say 2. It's probably 1, but I actually enjoy 2 quite a bit. I think it's a really good sequel. And I think that what's most interesting is how it does start with the Amityville horror, and it sort of is a very big part of the entire film. Jillian, you'll have to see it, because I didn't think it would be close to the original, but I think I do prefer it in some ways. I like sort of that it has like, now sort of has like an IP, like The Nun and what's the flickering man, the Crooked Man. I think that's really cool about it too. It's definitely I'm just to differ, but it might be my favorite. I don't know. They're very close, like John. Definitely not the third.
2 definitely has some really good moments. So I don't want to spoil one of them for you, Julian, but the one with the tape recordings, there's 2 different sets, and then they're on the train and they exploded. Like, kind of just blew my mind. I was like, whoa! And then the one, I think it's in one of the first scares in the movie, where you see like a demon. It's like when the channels are flipping and it keeps going back to the TV. And somebody comes out behind somewhere. That like absolutely scared the shit out of me when I watched that.
Also, the end. You just reminded me. The end is really haunting.
Yes, I think I know this exactly.
I'm not gonna spoil it for Jillian, but I think the end haunted me more from that one than the first, because of like the true story at the end.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, that was creepy.
Super eerie. Super. That's another cool way that they ended it, with sort of a like just with words, it created a really strange feel, and I think there's a visual too, but yeah, that's a really terrifying part.
Well, it looks like I'll have to go watch the second one.
It's on HBO Max. Really, sponsored by no.
I'm only interested in reality.
But I can see things that your people can't. Something terrible happened here.
A master Satanist is not an adversary to be taken lightly.
She's doing it again. She's reaching out to the darkness.
Lorraine, you need to come back.
Is saving him worth everything you have? Because that's what it may very well cost me.
Lorraine?
Thank you for tuning in to our special summer episode. We hope to see you again soon. And while our opinions may be a little bit ridiculous and a little bit racy, they're always real.